Welcome back. A little bit of something different today. We're getting away from the chilies. The dogs. So yeah, we're getting away from the chilies today, even though the channel is called the Mad Dog Chili Farm. I'm going to do a little bit of a review on the car. You've probably seen the car in previous videos where I've done some off-roading videos and stuff. I'm going to do a bit of a buyer's guide to a used Range Rover L322, but I'm going to concentrate on the older models. So that's the 2002 up to about the 2006, I believe they changed. This is the TD6, 3 litre, 170 odd horsepower. It's got the 5-speed GM gearbox, which is not the best. I'm going to run through a few things on the car to look out for and different common faults which you can sort of, when you're looking at buying one, you can sort of look at these items, see if they work, see if they don't, and you can sort of work out if it's going to cost you a lot of money to fix after you've bought the car. So I bought this one. We bought it in the UK. I took a bit of a chance. We didn't have a look. We didn't look at it, but it had full service history, and the full service history, it was all stamped in the book, and it was like 2,000 miles between each service. So it's not really, I don't think, had much of a hard life. I asked a friend who's a Land Rover specialist what to look out for, and he just said gearbox. Luckily, the gearbox in this one is absolutely fine. Changes gear lovely, it's smooth, there's no clonking, that's all fine. Now, Land Rover say the gearbox is sealed for life. GM, who manufactured the gearbox, they change the oil every 70,000 miles or whatever. You can actually get a kit, which I'm going to do to this, is change the gearbox oil. You drop the sump off the gearbox, you replace the filter, put the sump back on, fresh oil in it, run it up through the gears, all that kind of thing. Quite a straightforward job if you're a little bit mechanically minded. So I'm going to do that. If in the service history, when you're looking at buying one and it's had that job done, that's all good. We'll have a look around the car and we'll go for a bit of a road test, and I'll point a few things out that I've discovered. Now, the reason we went for a Range Rover, I mean, I love Range Rovers. I've had 4 or 5 now, going back to the early classic shape, right through to the P38, and now onto the L322. The P38 before this one had air suspension as well. That all worked fine. The air suspension has had a few, the airbag struts have been changed. I can't remember which end now, but I've got all the paperwork in there. That we needed a 4x4 so that I can get round the land at the new place. Obviously for towing the trailer, which that wasn't really for, because the Audi would have towed the trailer perfectly fine. But yeah, for getting around the land mainly, it tows the flower mower around the field for when we're cutting the grass. And also with the Range Rover, you've got the air suspension. So you've got access mode, which drops it right down onto the bump stops almost, which is handy for me getting in and out with a wheelchair. You've then got normal mode, which is normal ride height, and then off-road mode, which is even higher still. I don't know the measurements exactly. When you're in normal mode and you're going along the road, once you get over a certain speed and you've held that speed for more than 30 seconds, the car drops 20 mil into like a motorway highway mode, and that sort of squats the car down, and you really do notice it takes the body roll out of it, and makes quite a difference. But luckily on this car, air suspension all works perfectly. The compressor sounds like it's, I think it's in the spare wheel well, sits underneath the spare wheel. That's all fine. This current car, when we bought it, at 120 4,000 miles on the clock with, say, full service history, and I think we're coming up to 130,000 now, so bloody dogs. So yeah, I'll show you around it. We'll have a look under the bonnet, and then we'll go for a little road test and see how she goes. Now, one of the first things I'd look out for when buying one of these Range Rovers is tyre size. This has got the 20-inch wheels on it, and with the 20-inch wheels you get a narrower sidewall, which really firms the tyres up, and it makes it really quite responsive on the road. With the smaller diameter wheels, you're still getting the same thing, but you're going to get a wider sidewall, which could make it a bit wallowy. So with these 20-inch wheels, tyres can be a bit expensive, but I mean, this one's got Nexons on it, which people will probably go, oh God, Nexons. But they're a great tyre, and they work out at €100 each. Get the garage to fit and balance them. Lovely jubbly, job done. But just bear in mind, if you are planning to put a more aggressive tyre on it for off-roading, which the car is perfectly capable of, then your tyre choices will be quite limited, because there's not many off-road tyres which go up to 20-inch. So you might want to be looking at sort of 18-inch for that kind of application. So yeah, tyre sizes, that's quite important. If it's just going to be used on the road and you're going to be doing mild off-roading, I mean, even with these road tyres on, I've been through some pretty serious mud, and the capabilities of the car is quite phenomenal. And yeah, but if you're going to get into some serious off-roading, you need to have a think about your tyre sizes, what it's got on it and what they're going to cost you, and what tyres are available. So these xenon headlamps came as standard on all the L322s from 2002 onwards. You could opt to have a halogen headlight. That was an optional extra. I don't know why you would want to go backwards with an optional extra, but that's what they offered. So I don't think they look quite as nice as the xenon headlights. And with the xenon headlights, they've got a tourist switch on the back, which you can, when you select, it flattens the beam pattern. So it goes from kicking up to the left-hand side to being level. So when you're driving in Europe, and obviously we've imported this car into France, and for it to be legal, the headlights have to sort of conform, and with the tourist switch you can just level out the headlight beam, and that's it, job's a good one. There's an area prone to rust on the back of these Range Rovers, so you can just see it bubbling up on the wheel arch here, which I'm going to have to deal with at some point, a little bit at the back here. Now, if you open the door, you'll see it's all starting to bubble up there and just under the wheel arch. So that's somewhere to keep an eye out for. The jacking point on the sill on this particular one, when we tried to jack the car up, the jack went up through the sill, so we've got that to deal with at some point. But that's a nice little winter job. So yeah, open the back doors, check inside your wheel arches, and see if there's any paint bubbling up. I mean, we've got it on both sides on this one, but that's to be expected, and I'm not too concerned about that really. Another thing I'd also look out for, if the car is advertised as being chipped, any kind of ECU remapping, those cars I would steer well clear of. As it came out of the factory, the gearbox is pretty much at its limit for the power and the torque that the engine's putting out. Some say that you could probably give it a bit more, but if you want your car to last and you don't want to have to worry about having the gearbox changed or repairs to the gearbox or anything like that, you just want to get the bog standard car. Don't even think about remapping it. If you want something with a bit more power, buy something else. Buy one of the newer Range Rovers with the TD V8 in it, or petrol. They'll have a different gearbox. I mean, the later diesels had the 6-speed and then went on to the 8-speed gearbox. They seem to be a bit more reliable. This 5-speed GM box, from all accounts and what I've read on the internet, is pretty weak. So any car that's been remapped or had the ECU bit of tuning or had a tuning box fitted, steer well clear, because you're just asking for trouble. I was looking at getting this chipped or remapped, but after sort of seeing that about the gearbox, I thought no, leave it as standard. 170 odd horsepower is plenty. It is a big car, but there's enough power to lug the car about, and yeah, you're not going to gain much by getting it tuned or chipped. Not this particular model. This, you know, the TD6 with the BMW M57 engine in it. It's best left well alone. Just keep it well serviced so it's running in tip-top condition, and it should see you right. That's my opinion anyway. There are people out there who are going to, oh, another 30 horsepower, lovely. But the 30 horsepower and 100 newton meters of torque extra is likely to blow the gearbox to bits. So that's my advice on that one. As for fuel economy, when we had the P38 that had the 2.5 BMW diesel engine in it, we were sort of getting about 22, 24 to the gallon out of that. I did fit a tuning box, which gave, it was an adjustable one, you wired it all in. Whether it made a lot of difference, it did feel like it made a lot of difference, and it did put the fuel consumption up to about 28, 29 to the gallon. And that was sort of just driving locally, towing a little trailer with a mower on the back when we was working. Now this one, when my sister drove it from the UK to France, it was averaging 30 miles to the gallon, which I thought was pretty damn good. I mean, all the things on the internet that I was reading was saying the best you're going to get is 24 to the gallon. This was averaging 30 to the gallon. So obviously it's going to do a little bit more in some places and it'll do a little bit less. With all the country driving that we've been doing, when we go over to the other house, there's sort of like half an hour to 40 minutes driving on the dual carriageway, and then it's all cross country where there's 80 km/h speed limits, little villages after villages, so you're slowing down, speeding up. Even then, this has dropped down to 27 to the gallon, which for the size of it, we're still quite impressed with. But yeah, so that's fuel consumption out of the way. Obviously, if you've got the petrol, or you're looking at buying the petrol, it's going to be a hell of a lot less, but you'll get a little bit more power. So there's that to bear in mind. So there's not really a lot to see under here. That's the 6-cylinder BMW M57 engine, which is covered in Land Rover plastics. Got the fuel filter over there, the air filter's down in there somewhere. Batteries over the back corner there somewhere. This here is a box full of electrics. You got your brake fluid over there, and screen wash, coolant, and somewhere there'll be power steering fluid. I can't see where that is at the minute. There's nothing really you can check under here. Obviously you can check the oil, see what colour it is. Other than that, you're just relying on the service history. Now we're on board. There's a few things to point out when you're in the cabin. Obviously the steering wheel is electric. When you put the ignition on, that will come out to a preset. Wherever you left it last time, that will come out to where it was. Unless you've got it set on a memory button on the seat, because the seats are electric, so you need to check that your seats all move as they should. Now this is the HSE, but with the optional extras, the level of trim is higher than the Vogue. It's got heated seats in the front, heated seats in the back, which I don't think, I think on the Vogue that was optional extra. Now it's got memory seats, so you can set the seats to where you want them, set the steering wheel to where you want it, and program it into a memory button. I think there's, I'll tell you how many there is. There's 3 memory buttons on the seat, so you can program it for 3 different drivers. Now, I've read somewhere that the motors on the steering wheel or the mechanism can sometimes play up, so that's something you want to check out. The lever is below the indicator stalk, so check it comes all the way out, all the way back down, up and down, so that's all fine. Now if the car hasn't been used off-road a lot, you're going to want to check that the low range works. So I mean, how I put it in low range is I select neutral, flick the low range switch, there's a couple of little seconds, the light comes on the dashboard, you can hear a bit of a clonk, which that's all normal because that's just changing it from high to low in the transfer box. It will come up on the information display on the dashboard, low range selected, and then you're good for off-roading. Then you've got the hill descent control, which is next to it, and I don't know how you're going to test that on a road test, but if you can manage to get it into low range, just flick the hill descent switch, the hill descent light will come on, and that will work all the time you're off-roading. The only time that will get overridden, I think, is if you apply the foot brake while it's trying to do its thing, because basically the foot brake overrides the hill descent. If they all work, that's fine. Another problem is the sunroof. They can get out of alignment. Now, a competent DIY person can do that themselves, or you can take it to a Land Rover specialist or the Land Rover dealer. Now this sunroof doesn't work properly. It slides back, but it doesn't tilt. Now when you slide it back, it doesn't close up properly. Now you can reset the sunroof, but to reset the sunroof you push it into the tilt position and you hold the button on the tilt for 20 to 30 seconds I think, and that resets the sunroof. But because the tilt function doesn't work on this, I can't reset the sunroof. It's not something I'm going to look at fixing because I don't use the sunroof. I sometimes pull the cover back to let a bit more daylight in, but when you've got air conditioning you don't really want the sunroof open. So luckily in the boot when I bought it there was a little handle which you can put in just up here, and wound it shut, and it's been perfect ever since. So that's something you want to check out if you're looking around one. Make sure the sunroof all functions correctly. Other than that, the interior is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you know, this is obviously one of the early ones. It hasn't got the navigation unit in there. But other than that, it's got the console here with all the lights in it. There's lights absolutely everywhere. When you open the door, there's lights in the footwells, there's lights in the roof, there's lights in the doors. You name it, there's a light, which is very handy at night time, you know. But yeah, it's got an auto dimming mirror. Pretty self-explanatory. Bright, a car comes behind you, your bright lights on. Used to flick the mirror, didn't you, to angle it away. You don't do that anymore, that's all automatic. Airbags everywhere. And that's pretty much all I can say for the interior, other than it is very comfortable and lovely to drive. So here's all your control panel. This is all your air conditioning here. Heated seats. There's a remote tailgate release. This is the thing for the parking sensors. It's got parking sensors on the front and parking sensors on the back. Now, if you've got the trailer on and you put it in reverse, first thing that's going to happen is all the buzzers will go off. So you can actually disable the parking sensors with that button. This is your height for your suspension. Now, when you plug the trailer in, a little light comes on here, and all that'll do then is it'll go up into normal mode, and it'll stay there. It won't go into highway mode or anything like that until you disconnect the trailer, and then all the functions are back to normal. DSC button, that's like traction control. Don't need to worry about that. So there's the standard head unit. There is a multi-change CD thing in the glove box. Pretty standard analog dials. We'll switch the ignition on and we'll see the steering wheel come out. So around this side here, you can see, hang on, can you see that? That moves the steering wheel up and down, in and out. That's all good. See if it starts. That's good. And we'll look down here. There's the light on at the bottom. That's access mode. That's the lowest height that it'll go so that I can get in and out. If we turn that one click, the light's flashing in the middle. Now the suspension's coming up. And when it's at its ride height, that light will stop flashing and the bottom one will go out. Eventually. Like so. And then you can turn it one more click, and that will go right up to off-road setting, which we don't need to do right now. Well, I'll drop it back down so I can get out. The bottom one flashes until it's all the way down, and then that one goes solid. And there we go, we're all the way back down again. So if you're gonna be getting into buying a Range Rover, you really sort of need to do your homework. Know what it's gonna cost you. Know what maintenance is gonna cost. If you can do the maintenance yourself, that's ideal. I mean, we do all our own mechanicking. Even though I'm in a wheelchair, if there's jobs I can't do, that's when my trusty assistant Tina gets involved, and together we can both do pretty much most jobs on cars. The engine's got a timing chain, so there's no need to worry about that. They do wear, so if you've got like a slight ticking noise when you start the engine up when it's cold, that's a good sign that the cam chain is wearing, and it's going to want to have it looked at before, you know. I mean, on some of these early TD6s, I don't know how much a garage will charge to sort the engine out with a worn timing chain, it might make it, you know, not worth buying the car. But if you can do a lot of jobs yourself, you can save yourself some money. Parts are not that dear. I mean, people say, oh, Land Rover parts, but I mean, you can get OEM parts and you can get some good aftermarket parts as long as you're selective. Don't always go for the cheapest, as when buying a car. Buy the best you can afford. If you can afford one of the newer ones with a better engine in it, I would say probably go for that. But at the time, you know, we didn't have that sort of money. These ones are coming down to quite reasonable prices now that it's quite an affordable car. We paid £3,500 for this, although sight unseen. We took a bit of a gamble. But having said that, the only thing that's gone wrong, before my sister brought it out here, the battery went. So we had a brand new battery put on it. It's been fine ever since. And when she got here, there was a grinding noise, and I've taken the back wheels apart and took the brakes apart. And what it was, on these Range Rovers, whereas with the early Range Rovers, the handbrake was in a drum on the back of the transfer box. These ones are like normal cars. They've put the handbrakes shoes on the outside wheels on the back, so the shoes sit inside the disc. So once we'd taken the disc off, we'd found that the back plate that the handbrake shoes go into, there's like a pin goes through the shoe and you twist it, that holds it in. Now the back plate had rotted, so the pin had just pulled clean out, dropped in the bottom. The shoes had come loose, made a grinding noise. So I managed to, the back plates are readily available, but it's quite a big job because you've got to take all the hub off to get the back plate on. Now there's an American firm that sells some that are split, and you cut the old back plate off and you feed the new back plate in and bolt it together. They're quite expensive, but being as the back plates are readily available, I'm assuming it's quite a common fault. All I did on this one was I cleaned up the hole, welded a little plate in there, drilled it out, used the Dremel to elongate the holes, and then we've got a new pin kit and it went straight in. And then a couple of weeks ago the other side did the same, but luckily the hole wasn't so big, and a new pin was all it needed. Popped a new pin in and it's been fine ever since. One other fault on these, which I've heard a lot of people talk about, is the HVAC unit, which is the air conditioning. There is a relay somewhere under the dashboard. If you do a bit of research on the internet, I can't remember what they call it, it's a FCR relay or something like that. It's not allowing things to shut down. I mean, I take the key out, there's a fan running, but when you close all the windows and lock the doors, everything shuts down. But when this resistor plays up, it doesn't allow the fan to shut down or something. And the way to test that is to see if the blower works at all speeds, I think. That's just another thing that you can look up on the internet. There's thousands of threads on, you know, numerous forums about that subject, so I'm not going to go into that on here. This is just a quick buyer's guide for the early L322. So yeah, things to look out for, you know, obviously check your sunroof, everything electric on it, test it out. Don't be frightened if the owner's there or the garage, if you're looking at buying one from a garage. Don't worry about what they think, test everything. Test all the functions on the steering wheel. This one's got heated steering wheel, cruise control, radio controls, you've got your wipers. That's, you can have, when you, I'm not sure it's an automatic setting, but if you stick it on intermittent, there's a rain sensor somewhere. So I mean, I'll just leave it on the intermittent setting, and when it rains, they start going on their own, and they do adjust the speed to the rain, and they do keep up quite well. We've had other cars with automatic wipers, and they've sort of lagged behind a bit. You know, you get a really good downpour and it's like, oh, it's raining, and then they start going. But this one is pretty good. It starts going pretty much as soon as you get rain on the screen. That's good. It hasn't got automatic headlights, but it's got front fog lights, rear fog lights. And that's pretty much it. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I mean, the interiors get a bit tired on some of these older ones. A bit of trim's missing off the tailgate. That was probably my fault because we've been using this car for towing the flower mower around the field, and that does vibrate quite a bit, and the plastic that goes over the wiper motor on the rear tailgate, I think the clips that push into the tailgate have got brittle because the plastic's brittle, and we've been shaking away, it's just bust them off. That's no problem. I can pick that piece of trim up quite easily off eBay, get that shipped out here. It's got a nice size cubby box in the middle here, and when the aircon's going, that gets quite cold in there. I've got to take the centre console out because the aircon's not blowing out into the back very well. It's got vents on the back, but whether there's a pipe off or a bit of a blockage in there, I don't know. That's something we've got to look at. Another little job is the cigarette lighter. That seems to be a common thing. I've read somewhere that people that bought these when they were new were taking them back to Land Rover, and they were wiring the cigarette lighter up direct to the battery, so it was permanently live. This one worked on the key, so you got your cigarette lighter in the front there, you got one inside the top of the cubby box and one on the back of it. They're all linked together. And because we was having trouble with the battery, I had a solar panel on the dashboard, and I forgot to tell Tina to unplug it before she started it up, and it's not popped a fuse, but it stopped working for some reason. Now the 12 volt outlet in the boot, that still works. That's on a separate fuse, so that one works, but I'm going to wire this one up direct to the battery, put all the fuses in it that I need to, just for things like the sat nav. And then if we're going to be parking this car up for a week or more, then I'll plug the solar panel and put it in the windscreen and keep the battery just topped up nicely. So I think that's it for talking about the car. We'll go for a little drive now and see how it goes. Here's the gear stick, all the way back to drive, and what you can do is knock it over. That's now into sport gearbox, and it comes up on the dashboard sport mode. If you don't touch that, that'll just keep it in sports, so that it holds it in the gears longer in the revs before it changes up. But what you can then do is change gear manually when it's pushed over into sport. So into drive, across there, you can go up and down through the gears. So that says it's in manual mode on there now, manual mode. So you can change gears manually. So it starts in first, push it forward for second, third, fourth and fifth, and then change it back down through the gears accordingly. So, lovely sunny day, car's up to temperature. It is a bit noisier than the TD V8 and possibly the petrol, but I'll try and hold the camera without it shaking too much. See, it changes through the gears nicely. So we're up into third gear already, and yeah, I've got the windows open. Oof. It is just a nice smooth ride, and it's a quiet ride, a luxurious ride I should say. So this is what you're sort of paying for when you're talking Range Rovers and all this kind of thing. It's the driving experience as well as the, you know, the off-road abilities as well. It's just the way it sits on the road, the driving position. You sat high up above everyone else, you can see what's coming. Now obviously we're in France, this is a right-hand drive car, and people say, oh, don't you want a left-hand drive, it's easier for overtaking. I've not had any trouble with overtaking because you're sitting higher up above everyone else. You can see what's coming, you get a good view of the road. Obviously with tractors and lorries, overtaking those is a little bit difficult, but no, other than that, it's all pretty good stuff. Right, it's not going to be a 0 to 60, but I'll put it in sports mode, and I'll just put my foot down now we're warmed up. Let's just so it is quite rapid. If you can imagine 2.7 ton coming up the road, that was quite not bad. So that's it. I've walked around it, I've been for a drive in it, I've pointed out some things that can be common problems with these and things to look out for, things to check. If you're a bit nervous about it, take someone along who's a bit mechanically minded, or you can get a garage to check it out for you. You can pay a little bit of money and the AA do a check for cars and stuff like that. But it's just worth checking it over so you know what you're buying and you're not going to come up against a load of problems further down the line. I love these cars, always have liked Range Rovers. This is probably the best one that I've had. I've had a few classics, or the classic shape. I've had the V8 petrol and diesels. So yeah, this one is by far the most comfortable, powerful one that I've had. But the ride in it is far superior to the classics and the P38. I've got no experience with the newer ones, I've not been in one of those, but all I know is if you get a good one of these, the TD6, you should be laughing. You know, keep it well maintained, use quality parts, and they are a fantastic motor. They're going to cost you slightly more than an ordinary car would do, but then you're paying for superior ride quality, off-road capability, and just an all-round good package, really. So I'll leave it to you now. Go and find yourself one and treat yourselves.